Hey, Tuomas here. Subscribe for more horror stories. This mission started out like any other. At the time, I was staying at home, closer to the beach than the mountains where most of my jobs took place. I loved my house, but I couldn't wait to get back to work. There was nothing in the world that compared to the rush, the adrenaline of being out there, risking my life, fighting in the name of the entire planet, being a hero. My job was my life, and I had treasured my profession since I was a kid, since the first time I heard that being an alien hunter was a real thing. Everything started a couple of years before I was born. An alien invasion, just like humanity had dreamed of and feared for so many years. It was a catastrophe, and changed our history forever, but we, as resilient humans we are, came out victorious in the end. But that wasn't the end. Not at all. In a matter of months, a much smaller attack happened, and a year later, an asteroid that crashed on our planet carried living creatures within. It was as if that first invasion broke through an invisible wall, and now we couldn't stop these unwanted visits from happening. Sometimes, in asteroids or ships crashing on our planet, these were accidents. The aliens are confused, helpless, and occasionally they didn't even survive the atmosphere of our planet and would die almost instantly. Still, some incidents turned violent. Not necessarily full-blown invasions, but a beast released on an unfamiliar territory will easily turn savage, desperate to satiate hunger, thirst, or simply react aggressively to cope with the terror of the new environment. That's where people like me come in. Since that first attempt of an alien invasion, the military of every country in the world started preparing special units in case of another extraterrestrial threat. When I was a kid, these were really overwhelming, even theatrical groups that appeared to be getting ready for a war at the end of the world. However, as time wore on, technology improved at a breakneck pace, and we grew more knowledgeable about these menaces. The specialized units started requiring fewer people and greater weapons. Alien hunters became unique, rare, and highly tactical. They were real heroes, and for children everywhere, that was the dream job. At least it was for me. I had to work harder than most people can even imagine, but I've made it. Now I'm one of the best alien hunters on the West Coast. For that exact reason, more often than not, I didn't even need a team. When I got the call for this job, I immediately jumped into action. I prepared an all-terrain military vehicle, filled it to the brim with all the weapons I could possibly need, and, on the way to the coordinates on the mountains, I listened to the friendly voice of the AI assistant on my watch that replayed the details of my mission for me.
Asteroid 16B28 identified at 0700 hours of the present day. Estimated time for contact with the Earth's surface around 1600 hours. An approximate of 6 heartbeats detected. Official orders indicate neutralize and capture if possible. Eradicate if necessary. Good luck, Agent Eric Welch. Let us know if there's anything else you need.
A little before the estimated time, I saw the asteroid crash somewhere in the mountains. It was a little odd. Not just that it had arrived earlier than expected, but having so little time to prepare beforehand. At this point, most asteroids are detected days in advance. But I tried not to complain too much, and only moved faster. It wasn't until the moment I arrived at the perimeter and parked my vehicle that I noticed this was not going to be just another job. First, the mountain was on fire. It was normal for a collision to ignite fires, of course, but this was much, much worse. Maybe one of the minerals in the rock from space reacted badly against the Earth's atmosphere. I started coughing and spoke into my communication device. "Attention! Agent Welch here. I will require assistance from the fire department urgently."
Understood.
The artificial assistant immediately replied,
Do you need reinforcements from the Hunters Unit, Agent Welch?
"No thanks, I have that part under control," I replied quickly and ended the message at the same time I picked up a weapon and shot. There had been yellow, glowing eyes watching me from the flames among the trees far away from me, but moving closer and closer until I could hear it screeching and whining and getting ready to attack. Finally, the creature jumped towards me, but I was quick enough to shoot. An especially strong, metal-reinforced net shoots out from my gun and captured the beast in the air. It screamed and screamed and squirmed on the ground while I looked at it. It was awful, but not completely unfamiliar. But this particular type of alien resembled a common monkey, despite the shocking differences in the internal anatomy of their bodies. The spikes, the strength, the outstanding aggression. At least they were relatively small. It was one of my least favorite species so far, but all too familiar. Something close to monkeys could be close to humans, and the last thing I needed was thinking I was hunting something in any way related to my species. I waited for a second longer as the monkey-like beast continued to scream. Then I shot a different weapon, tranquilizing darts this time. It fell asleep within seconds and I started moving again. I set a couple of traps. I chased a few of the aliens and defended myself from others, and I avoided the fire. I got deeper and deeper into the woods of the mountain, coughing here and there because of the nearby smoke. But I trusted my equipment, the fire department, and my training to get me out of there fast enough if necessary. Every few minutes I heard a shrill cry from one of the aliens as they got caught in my traps. And then I spotted one running away from the blaze. I started chasing after it. I felt my heartbeat pick up and I couldn't help but smile. This was one of the most dangerous jobs in the world, but I had the time of my life with it. I ran until my lungs began to burn. I aimed the gun and fired a net that expanded and easily caught the target. I was grinning, satisfied, when I heard one of the monsters screech close to me, and I heard it too late this time. I screamed too when the creature landed on top of my head. I fell to the ground and groaned in pain. The monkey-like beast yelled desperately and tried to claw its way into my brain, but luckily I was wearing a helmet. I hit the alien with the butt of my gun, sending it tumbling to the side. I quickly moved up, aimed, and shot once, twice, 3 times for good measure. The little monster screamed just once. Blood blossomed all around it, and it fell limp and lifelessly to the ground. I was left panting, observing the rapidly decomposing body. It melted quickly as if it was boiling, and the smell was awful enough to make me retreat. When I was able to catch my breath, I took off my helmet and noted the scratches on its surface, tearing off the paint. I promised to tear out my brain if I wasn't more careful the next time. My heartbeat didn't have time to return to normal before I was startled again, but this time it was different. It was worse. I heard a feral scream coming from higher up the mountain, and I cursed my luck. That sound was much deeper than the higher-pitched yells of the little guys I'd been dealing with. I remembered the description of my mission. Approximately 6 heartbeats. That didn't necessarily tell me anything about the size of the threat. I had no option but to take a deep breath, regain my composure, and get back to work. I double-checked all the weapons I had on me and started moving uphill. Naturally, I began to worry. Oh, my confidence didn't waver, not after so many years of fighting against the most unexpected, dangerous and aggressive aliens this world has ever seen. I doubted there could be any worse than any monster I'd already faced. Creatures that defied our laws of physics and all reason. Aliens as small as mosquitoes, or as big as grizzly bears. I fought against claws, horns, fangs, tentacles, and venom. I wasn't scared of anything. On my way to the top of the mountain, I came across another one of the small aliens and I easily caught it, but then immediately heard one more screeching nearby. I stood still for a moment, waiting for the attack, my heart thumping inside my chest. But nothing came. I decided to move forward, more cautiously this time. I had to stay hyper-vigilant. What I found took my breath away. The alien wasn't about to attack me. It was wounded. It was lying on the damp forest earth, in a small puddle of its own greasy orange blood, already starting to boil, melting away the wounded body, but not quick enough to kill the agonized beast. It gave me enough time to investigate, which only made matters worse. The wound on the side of the extraterrestrial animal's torso looked like a bite, like something had just grabbed a bite of the alien monkey and left it there to die. But this species didn't usually attack each other, and that bite looks much smaller than something from a wolf or anything from these mountains big enough to overpower one of these monsters. I was unsettled, but I'm still convinced I'm stronger and better prepared than any alien hoping to attack me. And that's when I heard it. The explosion. It was so unexpected in so many ways that it made me jump in place, and then I immediately ran in the direction it came from. My mind scrambled to remember every case when the materials of the asteroid or the substances within reacted explosively when in contact with stuff from this planet. It wasn't completely unusual, but that was not what I was focused on. An explosion like that could only mean one thing, and the fire around us, it finally made sense. It was a fuel leak. The thing that crashed here today wasn't an asteroid. It was a ship. I cursed under my breath. The inconsistencies in the case finally made sense, but I hated that I had received flawed information. Still, it wouldn't be the first time I faced a single ship by myself, and I needed to know more. Despite getting a little closer to the forest fire, I reached the spot where the spaceship crashed. When I was close enough, I slowed down and moved more cautiously. All my senses were focused. I was alert and ready for a possibly lethal encounter. I double-checked the weapons strapped around my waist and across my torso. I had capture nets, explosive bullets, everything in between for all shapes and sizes. In my hand, I was holding a gun of tranquilizing darts for medium to large species. I was prepared for the worst, but if it was something new, I would be the one to bring it to the laboratories. This monster was mine. I heard footsteps nearby and turned hastily. There it was, coming at me from the dark, coming through the smoke. A big round head gleaming under the moonlight. I aimed and studied it quickly. About 6 feet tall, one head, 4 limbs, shockingly anthropomorphous. I fired a dart, but I could tell from the sound that I didn't pierce its skin. I started stepping back, firing again and again, but all of a sudden, the alien started running towards me, then suddenly leapt in the air. I grunted when the beast knocked me over. The fall took my breath away, and I reached for a different gun, but the monster didn't linger on top of me. It quickly moved away and I scrambled to my feet, but what I saw next made my blood run cold. The spaceship. At first, I only frowned when I saw it, but upon further inspection I felt my heart skip a beat. Chills ran down my body, and for the first time in years, I was truly worried about what I'd just walked into. That ship. It wasn't an alien. It was ours. Part of it looked frozen, and the rear section was badly burnt, but as if the design wasn't familiar enough, I saw the word NASA still visible on the broken hull of the devastated ship. A tragic sight. I didn't have time to think about the possibilities. Movement behind me made me turn around. "What are you?" I yelled. I groaned at my own nerves showing, but I couldn't let that affect my performance. Another shuffling sound, this time from the other side of the ship. "Show yourself! Now!" I ordered as loudly as possible so it wouldn't be so obvious my voice was trembling. I I took a deep breath and focused. I let go of the gun I'd reached for and gripped the tranquilizing darts tighter. I had a bad feeling, but I couldn't shoot to kill. I took a deep breath and moved slowly around the ship. I couldn't hear anything else. No movement. This was it. I could shoot. I could shoot and end this right now, but you know the old saying, curiosity killed the cat. Instead of shooting, I switched on the flashlight attachment of the gun. Both of us screamed at the same time. But the actions were very different. I was terrified, and whatever was in front of me was startled like any other beast caught in headlights. This wasn't a person, not anymore. But it certainly wasn't alien. The suit was dirty and torn. The glass of the helmet was cracked, leaving exposed the face of someone that used to be an astronaut. But now he was a feral, infected thing with orange stains around its mouth, alien blood. Before letting myself try to imagine the circumstances that led to this astronaut's tragic fate, I shot to kill.
It was 5 days to Christmas. The cold breeze of winter pierced through my lungs as I stared down from our ship at the ocean. We had sailed a few miles from the coast of France. I dreaded the thought of diving several feet into the sea. We were all kitted up for a deep water dive, and the time had finally come. It was freezing cold out here, but I had a mission, and this was an opportunity I may never get again. We held our breaths as we dove into the ocean. Our adventure had begun just like a dream, and there was an eerie silence amongst the team before our dive. The only sound that could be heard was the calm vibrations of sea waves as we splashed into the ocean. We were 5 in number, all armed with special weapons for underwater adventures, and I could sense fear and anxiety engulf the entire team. We knew what was at stake. It was understandable. My heart also raced faster than normal. We had just embarked on a journey into the unknown, and the suspense of uncertainty is the greatest torture of every man. I had left my wife at home, but she understood what I was getting into, and she was in full support, but I hoped to make it back for Christmas in one piece. I was expecting my first child, and this was the 9th month. It could happen at any moment. This was our first ever contact with such a massive alien structure, and an argument had earlier ensued aboard the ship amongst us whether it was a spaceship or an asteroid. We never got to a conclusion. We would soon get to find out anyway, and besides, anything was possible. I had stumbled on a structure in a secret lab at CERN, a book containing art and research about a time machine lay beside it. Even though the technology in the lab was well designed, I thought it was just a hypothesis, but now, the possibility of an actual time machine wasn't far-fetched. We had descended several feet to the bottom of the ocean when we sighted our prize. It looked more massive than it appeared on video and more unearthly. We all exchanged glances before drawing closer towards the massive pod-like object. It was well crafted, and we were now certain beyond doubt that this was no asteroid. It was something more. It looked like a large pod. Just then, a strange thought invaded my mind as I stared at the entire team. I immediately noticed something. We are all dispensable, I mused. I swallowed hard as I felt a tiny tingling in my chest. Did they perhaps know that Clark and I have been working with external agents and feeding them with information about the secret experiments carried out at CERN? I knew Clark We have been working covertly together for years, but we had to put on the act of strangers. His job was to keep us safe in case anything went wrong. The heavyweight kind of job with a lot of shooting. There were 2 of them on the mission, but deep down, we all knew that if any strange creature sprung out from whatever was left of the ship, only God might just be able to save us. A strange liquid flowed out from within the ship and into the vast ocean, and for everyone's sake, we hoped that it wasn't infectious. "How do we get the doors open?" A voice echoed behind me. It was Clark. "What doors?" I replied. "I don't see any doors." I stretched my hands towards the strange object on instinct, and it seemed to pulsate and sink deeper as I pushed further. I noticed what was happening and swam closer when I was suddenly swallowed into the ship and emerged inside. It was a path that led deeper into the ship. I turned and attempted to return, but the wall was as hard as rock. The rest of the team trooped inside the same pattern. We knew we would eventually have to find a way out, but we focused ahead on the task. A greenish goo flowed out from somewhere within the ship-like structure. It was the same liquid we had earlier seen outside the ship, but it didn't look harmful. Or so we thought. Besides, we were well kitted against extreme biohazard occurrences, so we marched on. Surprisingly, there was no single trace of water in the spaceship, which didn't seem logical as the pod-like structure had fallen thousands of feet from space before crashing into the sea. The ship should be wrecked. "Everyone, watch your 6, Clark whispered. "This ship should be wrecked, but it doesn't look as though it just fell from the sky, which also means that whatever it was carrying might still be in here," he continued. Everyone nodded in understanding. We knew what it was trying to say, and we braced ourselves for anything. We continued deeper into the ship, and my suit's body camera recorded every action. Everything about the ship felt unreal, and we all still had our oxygen masks on. We weren't sure about the nature of gases present in the strange pod, and we didn't want to take any chances. We arrived at a massive room filled with pod-like structures, which hung high above the room. What in God's name? Our jaws dropped when we sighted what was within the pods. The pods seemed like some sort of cryogenic storage chambers because the entities looked too large to be newborns. We couldn't be sure anyway because we had no idea about their method of reproduction. This was otherworldly. I couldn't contain my surprise. I could hear loud gasps from the rest of the crew. I exchanged glances with Clark as we proceeded further into the area. My curiosity flared up. "I knew it," I whispered underneath my breath. "I knew there was more." The aliens in the pod were not the only surprise. They also had prime technology beyond our farthest imaginations and were much more advanced than what we had on Earth. They were a mockery of our level of technological advancement. My eyes widened when I spotted something in the distance. I could recognize that structure from anywhere. It was the same structure I had seen in the lab at CERN a few days ago. "Another time machine?" I muttered. I struggled to wrap my mind around the strange coincidence. Why do the aliens have another time machine similar to the one I had seen in the lab? I asked myself. Or did it perhaps serve another purpose to them? Several thoughts began to plague my mind as I stood in childlike wonder. Did CERN plan all of this? My heart skipped a beat. I knew this was too much of a coincidence. They had been studying about this particular species for years, and now they were here. We had spent several minutes in the strange pod-like object when Clark stepped on something, sending a resounding echo throughout the room. I could swear I saw something move in the dark space above us, and I instantly narrowed my sight towards the area. Suddenly, I saw it again. Something definitely moved above me. I couldn't get a clear glimpse of it, but the pounding of my heart was enough warning. Another sound. I jolted back in shock as everyone in our team exchanged glances. Well, not everyone. My colleague, Dave, had gone deeper into the ship and away from our sights. I stared closely back above into the dark, and my eyes were unexpectedly greeted by an odd sight. Something hung above us in the dark, watching us closely. Its shadow reflected on the walls of the ship as I held my breath in panic. I retreated slowly towards the door in shock, as though I had just been captured in some sort of trance. What were we expecting anyway? I thought. We had walked right into Hell's Gates, and we expected not to get burned by their flames. "Watch out!" Clark's voice echoed throughout the place. A loud shriek was heard from a corner in the room, followed by audible screams of one of the scientists. It was Dave. I stared at Clark, who was now racing towards me with dread all over his face. He had seen something. The others followed instantly, screaming at the top of their voices. Whatever they had seen was scary enough to make them run and scream with such terror. I took another glance at the pods which hung above us. They seemed to be opening up. This is not good. It was time to go. I turned immediately, racing out of the room. I was, however, caught with a new challenge. We had not discovered a way out yet. I stared down at the green goo which was still flowing steadily on the floor of the ship. I followed its motion and hoped that it would guide me to an opening, perhaps. Clark and the others still raced out behind me. They had earlier gone much deeper into the room. I was still not sure what I was running from, but I didn't care. I had gathered enough information, and all that mattered now was getting out alive in one piece. I continued to sprint further away, and I could hear several shots being fired at a distance, followed by the screams of someone else. I arrived at the spot where the green goo flowed out, and it was still a dead end. The liquid somehow found its way out, but the walls of the ship were still hard as rock. Clark soon arrived with the last scientist. I knew whose screams I had just heard. "What did you see?" I asked, but they were both in shock and they stared blankly at me. Clark then proceeded to fire several rounds at the wall of the spaceship while screaming atop his voice in an attempt to blow open a hole in the spaceship and get the hell out. But the walls didn't seem affected by the gunfire. Loud noises emanated from the far end of the passage. We knew what was coming. I wrapped my fingers around my weapon and braced myself for anything that emerged from the dark path before me. I hadn't caught a clear glimpse of these creatures yet, but I hoped to make it out alive for my family. I breathed hard as we all turned and readied our weapons.
They lied to us. We are not alone in the multiverse, and they have known for decades. They have been studying the thriving civilization in the multiverse beyond our galaxy. Yes, a multiverse. A few universes exist beyond our sphere of reality. A few days ago, the Large Hadron Collider at CERN was activated, and although it was stopped halfway due to a few worrisome predictions, I believe something else happened that day. Something dark and unseen. The tension and terror on the faces of a few of the scientists were enough to raise questions in my consciousness. As you all know, I have been a scientist at CERN for decades, and my new promotion grants me access to top-secret research in the organization. Something was born that day, and they know it. There was a recent crash in the Atlantic not far from France, and I'm still investigating for a connection. An otherworldly structure descended from space and plunged into the ocean. The media is trying to cover it up, but I've seen the clip, and it is real. They are hiding something, and I know it. I've gained their trust, and I intend to know what they are hiding. In a meeting today, I was chosen as part of the 5-man team to dive deep into the ocean at the site of the crash and investigate the sinister-looking object which descended from the heavens. This is a Class 5 top-secret mission, and I would be dead if they find out that I have established communication with an external source about this. I have to go now. I'll report my findings after the investigation. Godspeed.
A man in a leather jacket stood at the alley, watching little children skate on the frozen ice in the distance. He chuckled at their innocence. It reminded him of his early days before his demons came clawing. He could hear the loud orchestra from an Orthodox church at the far end of the street.
Ah, St. Louis.
He mused. His head danced along with the sweet melodies of the Christmas songs. He sang along as trickles of snow hugged the ground. The scent of fried chicken hovered in the air, and he longed for a bite. He groaned when he heard soft footsteps stroll towards him. His trained ears picked up the sound from a distance. He would know those footsteps anywhere. He rose from his seat and turned around. It had already begun to get dark. Bonsoir. A man in a tuxedo strolled towards him, motioning for a handshake, but he refused a gesture. He had seen the strange object descend from the sky in a clip, and he knew that they were going to come around, asking him to help them to do another of their dirty work.
Mission? He asked. A man escaped the event at the crash site, and I don't want him speaking about whatever he saw to anyone. His name is Wong. I'll get other details across to you shortly. You know what to do,
Dr. Williams said. The assassin nodded and disappeared into the nearby crowd. I had made it out alive, but I now had a much bigger challenge. I had the recorded footage, and the world needed to know, but I had just received a text a few minutes ago. My family was in danger. I was caught between two choices. They wanted the video clip in exchange for my family. But I knew that was an obvious lie. They were going to kill us immediately when they get their hands on the video clip. What have I done? I had dreaded this moment for a long time. I never wanted my family to get involved in this. I wasn't even sure whether they knew that I was working with the United States government. I was a bit reluctant to send an update on my findings to my true employers. Several thoughts swirled around my mind as I drifted back to what had happened on the ship the previous day. We had readied our guns, and we were prepared to shoot at whatever sprung out from the dark path in front of us, when the walls of the spaceship suddenly gave way as several men in advanced suits trooped into the ship. They slaughtered every single creature in the ship, as though they had been training for years. These men obviously had prior knowledge about these new alien visitors. Their weapons looked highly advanced. I had joined them in the fight, but I was knocked unconscious by one of the aliens. But just before I shut my eyes, I caught a glimpse of a last disturbing act. Some of the men turned on us and shot at what was left of my team before retreating out of the ship. They had probably presumed that I was already dead. The maritime city of Venice was home to thousands of tourists from around the world. My wife sat patiently in the empty room with her hands on her baby bump. She prayed earnestly in her heart that the baby would just hold on a little longer until she was out of the place. The assassin paced around the room. He was disturbed about something and seemed to be having a bad day. Suddenly, loud shots erupted from outside the room, and he immediately rushed out to check what was going on. After a short while, new faces emerged into the room. Men in strange uniforms trooped in. They looked American and appeared to be covert operatives. "Don't be scared. I'm Clark. We're friends of your husband," one of them said before returning outside. The next few words she spoke were enough to send the entire room into an instant pandemonium. "The baby's coming!" My phone vibrated again. I had been waiting for their call for hours, and it finally came through.
Wong, it's Clark.
The past few days had been confusing enough, but this was the height of it. What? How? I saw you die. How did you get to my wife? I struggled to find the right words.
It's a long story, Wong, but for now, your wife is safe with us. We will get her somewhere safe so you don't have to worry about her for now. But be very careful. The assassin escaped our grasp, and he will be coming straight for you now. We've sent him a few men to your location, but he might get to you first, so stay frosty. He seemed to be surprised when he saw us, which is a good sign. They didn't know until now that we had been working undercover. You can send in the video clip now.
Clark's words were assuring, but I was baffled at how he'd managed to get out of the alien pod alive.
Oh, one more thing, Wong.
Clark's voice resurfaced on the phone.
You're now a dad.
It took a while for the message to sink in. The dilemma I was in had made me forget about her condition. Can I speak with her now? I wanted to hear her voice.
Just send in the clip. The men should be at the pickup point soon. You'll be seeing your family soon, Wong.
I sent in the recorded clip and disappeared from sight. I couldn't wait to see the new addition to my family. The ferocious waves of the ocean splashed across the docks as fishermen trooped everywhere, going about their business. There seemed to be a loud clatter that stemmed from amongst the crowd. Someone was screaming something about seeing a strange creature on the beach. He had hacked down his son with a knife while screaming at the top of his voice about seeing a strange being. There was terror evident all over his face. He killed his own son. A few minutes later, another woman began to act similarly. She was pointing at me. I had to do a double take at a nearby mirror to be sure if I still looked normal. The woman ran away from the area in fear. My thoughts immediately trailed back to the green goo which I had earlier seen from the ship. I prayed that my assumptions were wrong, but something was definitely strange about the simultaneous actions of both of them. Sirens blared up in the distance as someone else began to react in a familiar pattern. Something was wrong. Out of nowhere, a spitting bullet whizzed past my ears, missing my head by a small fraction. I ducked on instinct and snaked my way amongst the crowd. The bullet had hit someone else, and chaos instantly broke out among the crowd. I took advantage of the growing chaos and hid in the numbers. As I ran with the crowd, I spotted several other people who alleged to be seeing strange creatures. They all became homicidal, killing anyone and everyone along their path. I spotted a man in a leather jacket chasing after me. That had to be the assassin. I meandered around the fleeing crowd and prayed underneath my breath for the US team to come get me, and my prayers were soon answered. Clark stood inside a chopper which approached towards me, and the killer disappeared into the moving crowd. I wasted no time in hopping aboard, and we instantly sped out of the area. I had cheated death the second time in 2 days. It felt good to be on American soil again. My wife and daughter were healthy and safe, but chaos was breaking out in the world. A strange pandemic was spreading. We weren't sure what sort of pathogens were released. Infected persons hallucinated about seeing normal humans as terrifying creatures and instantly became homicidal. I knew that it had something to do with the greenish goo that seeped out of the spaceship on our trip down the ocean, but I had no certain proof, and we couldn't conclude whether it was waterborne or also airborne. How did you survive? I saw them shoot at you. I turned to Clark. They weren't much of a good shot, he said while munching on some peanuts. It wasn't a convincing answer, but I didn't push it. Belle was here too. She was the third mole in CERN. Her mission was to use the distraction of the crashed ship and hack into their top secret database about the Hadron Collider and their plans with all indications. She was successful, but with the look on her face, it wasn't good. Briefing in 5, someone's voice echoed from the speakers. The meeting had lasted for about an hour, and we realized that what was going on was bigger than what we had imagined. I was chosen for another mission along with Clark, and we knew that we would never return this time. I couldn't tell my wife about the mission. Was I being a bad father? I thought, but it wouldn't matter anyway if Dr. Williams' plan pulled through. The entire world would be subjected to his will. We had to stop this madness before it began. Most horror stories often began with a crazy scientist, and this one was no different. The information gathered by Bell had revealed that Dr. William, along with the various top scientists at CERN, were plotting to dominate the world in a highly unlikely manner. They had known about the aliens and their technology for decades and had been trying to discover a way to lure those species to Earth. And that was the secret purpose of the Hadron Collider. They weren't just attempting to create a god particle. They were creating a signal that the outworldly creatures would not be able to refuse because they had something in their possession. The other piece of the time machine. How they had gotten it, she could not explain, but she said the aliens would give anything to get it back. When they started the Hadron Collider a few days ago, they had sent a strange signal into the dark cosmos. It was picked up by the aliens, and they responded with the first team whose ship crashed into the Atlantic, which was also part of the plan. According to Bell, Dr. William discovered a way to control the time machine. but he would need some of the aliens to be able to start up the machine. With such technology in his grasp, he'll easily take control of the world. He had gotten all the necessary ingredients for his malicious plan, and we had to race against time to stop it. We decided to keep the recorded clip away from the public for now until our mission was complete, as it would spread more panic in the already growing chaos. The infection had spread wide, and scientists around the world researching for a solution. Dr. Williams was aware of the incoming threat. The assassin had informed him of the failed mission, but he didn't seem to care anymore. He had gotten his prize, and nothing else was more important to him. Thousands of alien spaceships journeyed towards the Earth to retrieve their prize. They had probably lost contact with the first spaceship, and they knew that something was wrong. The world was also burning in chaos, but he didn't care. If the time machine worked, he could bend the hands of destiny and make his own reality. He had longed for this since he was a child, and his dream had finally come to life. Years of planning and research had been put into this moment, and he wouldn't give it up for anything. "I am the new God," he whispered, smiling to himself as he watched the second piece of the time machine being set in front of him. It had been retrieved from the crashed ship. He stared at the sinister-looking creature, which was wound up a few meters beside him. It was about 6 feet tall, and its skin was green. The device only recognized its makers, so Dr. William needed the alien for the startup. They couldn't communicate with the alien species, which made it more difficult. The time travel device was about 10 feet tall and could fit a truck in it. It looked like a portal of some sort and was circular. Dr. William proceeded to launch the device with the help of the captured alien, as a massive energy pulsated around it. Certain connections were made and he was set to go in. He had studied the laws which governed time travel, and he knew what to do. The other scientists stepped back, but Dr. William remained in front of the device, laughing aloud with pride. "I hold the power of time in my hands. I am the new God. I am what the world needs," he screamed at the top of his voice as he charged towards the portal, which had now formed a deep, dark haze. His fellow scientists had warned him that they needed more time to study the device to ascertain its safety before use, but Dr. William had waited too long, and his curiosity was at its peak. Everyone was terrified of the device. Despite years of research, they still had little knowledge about it, and the vast possibilities of what could be achieved with the device seemed to scare them now. But Dr. William had exhausted every ounce of patience and wanted to know desperately. Clark suddenly lunged from a hidden corner in the lab and tackled Dr. William to the floor, just before he jumped into the dark hollow of the device. Dr. William was old, and he was no match for Clark's well-built arms. The rest of our team trooped in quickly through different access points. We had infiltrated the entire place, and Dr. William was left defenseless. Everyone at CERN seemed to have changed their minds anyway. The alien suddenly broke free, but did not attack anyone. It remained still, watching everyone's movements for a few moments. Bell instructed everyone to stand down. It then motioned towards me. It was trying to tell me something, but I couldn't understand what it was saying. But Bell could. She lunged towards the device control and punched a few buttons. The alien then suddenly jumped in front of the time machine and held both of them together. "No, no, no, you son of a bitch, get off me!" Dr. Williams seemed to know what he was attempting to do, and if he was angered by it, then it was definitely a good sign for us. Wait a minute, they weren't here to retrieve the time travel device. They were here to destroy it, but it seemed as though the device can only be destroyed when the two of them are bonded together. The revelation hit me as I stared in shock. That was what the alien was doing. Bell motioned for everyone to step out of the room. No one protested, and everyone immediately rushed out. Dr. William was cuffed and carried away as he continued to scream. An explosion soon erupted from within the lab, throwing everyone to the ground. No one was hurt. After a while, the alien emerged from within the thick smoke and proceeded towards a laptop that sat on a desk somewhere in a corner. It typed on the computer before dropping something on the table and launching out of the room through the window. shattering the glass into 1,000 pieces. I rushed towards the laptop and stared at a sticky substance which it had left behind before shifting my gaze towards the text on the screen. I was amazed. It looked to be an archaic language. I turned on the translator. 6 words now appeared recognizable. Destroyed device. Cure left. Going home. I understood what it meant instantly as I shifted my gaze back to the substance on the table. A cure for the pandemic. It had destroyed the device and it was returning home. It had completed its mission. It was probably going to tell the rest of his kind that the mission was complete. Hopefully, they would return peacefully to their world. Our world may never know what happened this day, but a few of us will carry this memory and look out to an adventurous future because we knew that there was a thriving civilization lurking somewhere beyond our galaxy. I shifted my gaze towards the sky. Somehow, we believed that only humans were capable of good, but this alien had just proved us wrong. Not all of its kind were good, but unlike the ones we had met on the spaceship a few days ago, it chose peace.
Hey, it's Teresa. Subscribe for more horror stories.
Dr. Carter is dead. I'm the last surviving crew member aboard this ship. We had a fatal collision with an asteroid, and the entire crew is dead. I have lost control of the cargo, and the Falcon has been thrown off course. I'm crashing into an unknown planet, and I don't think I'll make it. This is Dr. Eva, the second pilot of the space cruiser Falcon. This is my last message.
The enigmatic planet of Ucha Prime, home to the Predators, had 2 visitors today, man and xenomorph. One an invasion, and the other a stranded astronaut lost in space. The first time in the history of the multiverse that these 3 species have met, a secret only known to one. My spaceship descended upon Ucha Prime like a fiery comet, blazing as I crashed into the red earth. I was awoken moments later by the sound of explosions echoing in the distance. What is going on? Where am I? With the impact of the crash, I should be dead. I peered around and noticed something huge was going on, like some sort of war. A huge ball of fire suddenly descended in my direction as I instantly sprung to my feet and darted towards my left. I noticed that the gravity was different. I felt very well light, but still balanced, and I was a bit faster than I had been on Earth. The fireball crashed into the rocky earth behind me as I stared in shock, wondering what had just happened. I shifted my gaze back to the growing chaos at some distance. A mountain of red earth shielded my eyes from a perfect view. I decided to climb the mountain to get a better view. I was almost at the top of the mountain when I realized that I had been breathing without my space helmet. It was shattered after the crash. "What the hell?" I whispered. "Where am I?" I soon got to the peak of the mountain as my eyes were immediately greeted by a bizarre sight. Oh my god. I couldn't fathom what I was staring at. My jaw had dropped low as I laid flat on the rocky floor to keep myself out of sight. I peeked carefully again into the growing chaos. It seemed like 2 different extraterrestrial species were at war. It seemed like an invasion. The invading species had an elongated cylindrical skull with eyes underneath their visors, and they moved with disturbing speed. The inhabitants of this strange planet, however, seemed more man-like. They had greater height, long hair-like appendages on their heads that looked like dreadlocks and reptilian skin, and their faces featured arthropod-like mandibles with no visible nose. Wait a minute, how can I see all this from far away? It seemed as though my entire sense had been heightened on this strange planet, An unexpected spaceship debris spun towards me from the battle, as it immediately retreated down the mountain. The debris crashed against the peak of the mountain where I had earlier been and scattered into several pieces. It seemed as though one of the invaders noticed my flee as the spaceship was now flying in my direction. I had to think fast. I spotted a small tunnel that protruded from a side of the mountain, and I instantly sprinted towards it. The alien spaceship soon descended towards where I had earlier been and loitered for a moment before returning to the war zone. Suddenly, scaly hands ran across my shoulder as I turned around, startled, and fell to the ground in shock. I looked closer into the dark tunnel and realized it was just a dying branch. Branch? I mused. Was there life on this planet before? Lots of questions had been burdening my mind as I continued further into the tunnel. I couldn't go back outside as that was a death trap. I knew that I had to stay hidden and, if possible, scheme my way out of this unusual planet. The heat on the planet was becoming unbearable, but I didn't have much of a choice. Luckily, I still had my radio with me. It was broken, but I was gonna try to fix it. Wong is a space traveler, and he had just picked up a strange frequency. He had traced the frequency back to the source. The coordinates pointed towards a close-by planet, and he was already en route towards the coordinate. "Dr. Eva," he mused as he listened to the recording again. She had said that she wasn't sure if she was going to make it, but that it was worth the adventure. The tunnel led out into the thriving city of Ucha Prime. I stared in awe at the intricate magnificence of the planet. From the outside, it seemed like some sort of dead and deserted rocky red Earth planet, void of life and purpose. But here, I was staring at advanced technology 1,000 light years away from Earth. Several predators rushed in and out of the main gate leading into the city. From the look of things, it seemed as though the inhabitants of this planet were caught unaware. They weren't prepared for an invasion, but so far, they have managed to hold back the persistent invaders. One of the predators suddenly shifted his gaze towards my direction as I immediately scampered back into the tunnel. I could swear that he had seen me. He obviously saw something. Heavy footsteps soon approached from the exit of the tunnel. I swallowed hard as he stepped closer. A loud bang suddenly erupted outside of the tunnel, within their city, as the footsteps stopped and quickly retreated out of the tunnel. That was my saving grace. I took in heavy breaths as my racing heart began to slow its pace. That was close, I mused as I stared down at the broken radio in my hands. I proceeded back into the tunnel. I need to get out of here. It was slowly getting obvious that I needed to find a way out of this planet, as my chances of survival dwindled with each passing second. I need to get this fixed. I had some basic training during my early years as an astronaut back on Earth, but that was many years ago, and I wasn't certain if I could still recall how to repair a broken radio. But this was my life on the line. I didn't have any choice but to remember. It wasn't too hard to fix. I pushed a few buttons and joined a few wires, and it was back to life. I wasted no time as I clicked on the record button.
"This is Dr. Eva. If you can hear me, please respond. I am stranded on a strange planet, and I've been caught in an all-out war between what seems like aliens and predators. I need an extraction as I'm not sure how much longer I can survive over here. My space cruiser came into collision with an asteroid, and my entire crew is dead. I crash-landed on this strange planet, and all hell seems to have broken loose over here. I'm still yet to be discovered, so if you can hear me, please send help."
"She survived," Wong exclaimed as he listened to the new message. "She is definitely a fighter," Wong thought. She also spoke of a war between two extraterrestrial species. Wong knew that he would have to tread with caution. He picked up his radio and spoke into it. Dr. Eva would soon breathe the soothing air of relief once again. I leaped in ecstasy in the cave where I sat. I had just received an optimistic response over the radio, and it already seemed like the best news I had ever received in my entire life. I was going to live. Perhaps a ray of hope now shone in my dark corners of despair. Wong, I quietly let out a wide grin on my face. The heat on this planet was getting intense, and all I wanted at the moment was to get the hell out of this planet. I had had enough sightseeing to cover for an entire decade of space trips and Perhaps I was going to retire after this if I made it back to Earth alive. I had successfully described where I was, and Wong had confirmed that he had sighted the planet. Everything seemed to be going according to plan, until another loud explosion erupted at the other end of the tunnel, where I had just come from. Several heavy footsteps rushed into the tunnel, and I immediately jumped to my feet and raced out of the tunnel as the footsteps trailed closely behind. Wong was supposed to be here by now. As I stared into the sky, I soon emerged out of the tunnel, and I noticed that the heated battle was beginning to seem endless. I crouched behind a huge rock as the creatures also sped out of the tunnel. It was the invaders, not the inhabitants of the planet. My heart began to race once more as they approached the rock where I was hiding. I took occasional glances at the sky, hoping for some sort of miracle, and it soon came. A huge Earth-like battle spaceship appeared into the horizon and descended into my direction. It had to be Wong, I thought. The spaceship door sprung open, and I instantly hurried towards it. The aliens, noticing something move in the distance, decided to give it chase. Just then, huge guns which were attached to the sides of the spaceship whirled as Wong fired continuously at the incoming threat. I made my way into the spaceship, and the doors shut tight. Others on the battleground, noticing the new visitor, turned their spaceships towards ours and began to give chase as Wong lifted into space. 3 alien spaceships were now on our tails. I joined him on the second pilot seat and strapped in as we worked together to evade the heavy fire. The pursuit through space continued for a while, and Wong finally got tired. He halted his spaceship suddenly in space and retreated towards the incoming threat, blasting everything he had left at the incoming alien spaceship, turning them into a pile of space debris. Solo space pilots were always badass, so I wasn't surprised at his sudden act of bravery. I would have loved to stay to find out who had won the battle between the two species, but I reminded myself that I didn't stand a chance against these aliens if I were caught. I was just a simple prey amongst 2 apex predators. I stared down from above the spaceship as Wong sped away from the planet. This was an encounter I'd never forget. I didn't think we would stand a chance against any of these 2 creatures. I heaved a heavy sigh as I shut my eyes to sleep.
Hey, Tuomas here. Subscribe for more horror stories. The Beginning of the End. 29th of April, 2071. BBC Breaking News.
It has been approximately 724 days since the beginning of what has been termed the Armageddon, the end of days and the extinction of planet Earth. Approximately 2 years ago, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration Agency, European Space Agency, and China National Space Administration Agency have all confirmed that the Earth has left its trajectory, moving at a disturbing speed of 35 kilometers per second. It is no news that the Earth is now on a journey to total extinction, as oxygen levels in the atmosphere have also dropped by 3.09% due to increasing distance away from the Sun, which is now recorded to be at a distance of approximately 50,000 kilometers from Earth. There has also been an increase in the number of deaths due to unidentified reasons over the last 6 months. Religious clerics have termed it as the end of the world, and advised mankind to get closer to God. Multitudes of people have been seen sleeping in pilgrimage grounds, churches, mosques, and religious shrines after receiving a recent report from NASA that the Earth is now approaching the famous ringed planet itself, Saturn, which has also detached itself from its orbit, and after diverse calculations, predictions, and estimates, it has been declared that the chances of a catastrophic collision between these 2 mighty planets is approximately 67.2%. The cause of this catastrophe is currently unknown, and a team of astronauts have been sent on a last hope mission to discover, and if possible, provide answers, as the fate of the human race now rests on this team. I am Diana Fox, reporting from BBC headquarters, Westminster, London.
Wristwatches and clocks have become useless, as scientists can no longer calculate the time, because the Earth has lost her rotational sequence as it was before. And it has also been confirmed that the Earth's rotational speed is on the rise. She has also lost her revolutionary pattern, and is now floating in space, and has been moving towards an unknown destination until recent sightings of Saturn. Apparent sunrise and sunset happens twice a day, according to the formerly used solar time at Greenwich Meridian. The distance between the Earth and the Moon has also increased, and space agencies around the world are controlling artificial satellites to stay in range with the Earth in order to keep in touch with happenings in outer space. Natural disasters like earthquakes in Nepal, the United States, Tahiti, and the most recent in Africa, which drew further confirmations that the end is nigh, as Africa has never experienced such a devastating earthquake in its history.
If you can hear me out there, this is the command pilot speaking. This may be my last message. The rest of my team are dead. Something is out here. I fear that all hope is lost. You need to go.
Colonel Barnes stepped up to give his briefing. Those were the last words from the command pilot of the previous mission before the line went dead, he started. Whatever is out there must be causing some sort of chaos in our solar system. I'm convinced that it is what has been causing the strange happenings in our world as we know it. Somehow, our satellites have been unable to identify anything unusual. Whatever is out there has succeeded in shielding their activities from us with more advanced technology. The only reason the Earth has not been crushed into a lump of molten magma is because, somehow, our gravitational pull is still miraculously in place, but no one is sure how much longer this miraculous grace will hold. A single drop or rise in gravity will result in the total extinction of mankind. Colonel Barnes stepped aside for General Hunter to continue the briefing. We send you into space today, not as astronauts, but equipped as soldiers, General Hunter began. We're sending you all to war in an unknown territory, and this will not be an easy task. But have in mind that you will be fighting for a greater cause. You will be fighting for the lives of your family, friends, your nation, and the entire human race as we know it. Whatever is out there is the enemy, and thousands have already lost their lives in this madness. Our hopes rest on you, my brothers. Thank you for taking this mission, and we hope for your good return. Godspeed. Those were the last words we heard before boarding the rocket ship. We were probably all flying to our deaths, but what difference did it make? We were going to die anyway if we remained on Earth. We might as well die fighting for a cause. Cheer up, brother, Anderson said. It's going to be a fun ride. We were 4 members, a small crew for such a huge task, I thought as I tried to force a chuckle, even though my heart screamed in my chest. I swallowed hard and braced for liftoff. This was my first space trip. We'd been flying through space for almost a month when we finally approached the coordinates where the previous crew had lost connection with the Mission Control Center back on Earth. Everyone breathed hard as we were all ready and suited up with our various advanced weapons and gadgets. We were ready for almost anything, except this. A loud bang erupted from the southernmost chamber of the spaceship. Something just landed on top of us. Everyone charged up their laser guns as we all proceeded to the southmost chamber. We soon arrived at the south chamber as an explosion erupted at the side of the room, ushering in a strange-looking creature. My jaw dropped as I stared at the creature in a trance. It was unlike anything I had ever seen. I was in front. Oh, Jesus, I exclaimed as I froze. Brandon! Shoot the damn creature! A voice barked behind me, which I guessed was Sam, but I was too shocked to pull the trigger. The alien screeched loudly, and launched towards me when Anderson pushed me aside and fired continuously towards the alien while screaming at the top of his lungs. A deafening cry and dropped back out into space. "Is it dead?" Sam asked curiously. "I think it is," Anderson declared, smiling to himself. Suddenly, the alien returned, grabbed Anderson, and disappeared back into space as all the crew fired in its direction. "Get your fucking head back in the game, soldier!" Sam barked as I stared into space.
H4 is damaged. We need to drop that damn thing. Move to H3.
The commander's voice echoed through the speakers. He was talking about the chambers. There were 4 space chambers on our rocket ship, and one had just been destroyed.
There is a space tracker on Anderson, and we're all gonna follow it. Let's all hope that Anderson did not die in vain. Hopefully it will lead us to their base.
Commander Roberts continued. I felt guilty, but my team understood, and they encouraged me to be brave.
Fear is for the weak.
Commander Roberts had told me.
The brave fear with their heads, but they do not let it get to their hearts,
He added. The tracker had come to a steady halt, but it took us 2 days to get to the point, and we were greeted by a terrifying sight. A massive spaceship hovered steadily in the open space as aliens swarmed around the ship in a coordinated manner. Some sort of strange energy seemed to be emanating from the ship, directed towards the Earth. "This is Commander Roberts requesting an audience with the Mission Control Center. Do you copy?" Our pilot immediately spoke into the radio.
This is Mission Control Center. We hear you loud and clear. What is your status?
A voice echoed back. "Anderson has been taken by some aliens, but—"
Sorry, Commander.
General Hunter interrupted.
If I can hear you correctly, did you just say aliens?
"Yes, sir. Aliens. We just fought one off, sir, and I think we found what has been causing all the chaos in our solar system. Connecting to live feed now," Commander Roberts replied as he proceeded to push a few buttons. I could hear the loud gasp through the radio from the center back on Earth. They were as surprised as we were. This had finally confirmed that we were never alone all along. We didn't completely understand what these extraterrestrial neighbors were doing to our solar system, or how they were able to mask themselves from our satellites as they were not that far from the Earth, but we didn't care. We needed to get the coordinates of this location back to Earth and bomb the hell out of it. The Earth needed to stop moving towards Saturn. "Sir, I think they just spotted us," Sam declared. Hundreds of alien spaceships approached us, and at that moment, we knew we were never going to make it back. We had just one more mission. Get the coordinates back to the Mission Control Center. Even if the aliens didn't get us, it would be nearly impossible to escape the force of whatever would be shot at the spaceship. We had just gotten information that the Earth was a few days away from Saturn, and something had to be done quickly. Back on Earth, prime ministers, presidents, scientists, and top military and space research officials from nations around the world had come together behind closed doors in a bid to launch several advanced nuclear warheads at the spaceship hovering above Earth. Critical measurements and calculations had to be put in place quickly, as the Earth was now slowly approaching the ringed planet. We knew it was going to be a nearly impossible task, but it was still worth a try as Commander Roberts now meandered his way around the various obstacles in space, away from the alien spaceship. But the aliens had already given chase as they trailed closely behind atop several smaller ships. Sam and I stood aboard the spaceship, shooting down as many aliens as we could as Commander Roberts worked on the coordinates.
You can return back to the ship, boys. I've secured the coordinates. It's time to switch up the heat.
Commander Roberts' voice echoed through the speakers as we quickly retreated into the ship.
We can still make it out of here just in time. Have faith, boys,
he said as he sped back towards Earth. He switched to supersonic speed as everyone buckled up for a bumpy ride. On Earth, the entire world stared up to the heavens as they looked to the skies, which were covered with advanced nuclear missiles being shot from every corner around the world. Proper estimations had been carried out to keep the missiles away from the path of Commander Roberts' team as the entire world hoped that the missiles will be able to eliminate the threat. An alien ship suddenly crashed into ours, throwing Roberts off balance as we lost control at supersonic speed and crashed into a nearby asteroid. Our ship was wrecked. The aliens began to retreat after they sighted the incoming rain of missiles. Our ship soon exploded, throwing me into space. As I floated in the vast, open void, Sam and Commander Roberts remained still, floating calmly. They were probably dead. I noticed that my helmet had cracked as oxygen began to siphon away from my suit's atmosphere. I took one last glance at the beauty of the Earth from above. It was an honor to have been part of this mission.
Hey, it's Joe. Subscribe for more horror stories. Dr. Stones, an expert archaeologist, has been getting high levels of radiation emanating from a secret cave at an excavation site. No one has discovered this strange spot, and he intends to keep it that way. He has been digging for a week now, and he could feel much closer to his prize. Whatever was hidden under the pile of earth would surely be worth thousands of dollars in the black market. He stared at the sun, which was almost high up in the sky. His excavator had just come in contact with its prize, and he took a quick glance around to be sure that he was alone. The radiation detector device had spiked at an abnormal level. Holy shit! He screamed as he stared at the strange object buried in the earth and rushed to get his protective clothing. He soon unearthed a large egg-shaped object. It was about 3 feet high. Dr. Stones carefully placed the strange object in his truck and sped away from the site. The strange object had caught his attention, and he decided to study it first before putting it out for sale. 5 days have passed, and Dr. Stones was slowly getting obsessed with the round object because it somehow glowed in the dark, painting the night with a beautiful mix of emerald and sapphire. A beautiful display of colors that left Dr. Stones speechless. He couldn't take his eyes off the strange object all day, and he studied it closely, fascinated by its ethereal beauty. It was a calm Friday evening when the object began to shake uncontrollably as Dr. Stones rose abruptly to his feet. Fear and fascination clouded his choices as the object began to break from the inside. Holy shit! It's an egg! Of course! He chorused loudly as he noticed something moving within the egg. His shirt was already drenched with sweat, but he refused to move an inch. A strange creature soon emerged from within the egg, and Dr. Stones stared in shock as the strange life form stared back at him. It was about 1 foot tall, a mix of emerald and sapphire. Its entire body was covered in scales that glittered like diamonds, pulsating at every second. His heart raced faster as the alien continued to stare at him, its deep blue eyes staring intently at him. The alien looked terrifying, but somehow still looked adorable. A perfect oxymoron. It had legs and arms and looked like an armadillo, but its head similar to a chipmunk. A poor description, but that was the closest description he could accord the strange creature. Dr. Stones soon began to think about its inborn instincts. What? An alien? Are you kidding me? An alien? He whispered. Predator or prey? Dr. Stones stared in awe. He knew that this new discovery could be dangerous, but he didn't care. He stretched out his arms as the alien gave a loud, eerie cry and jumped calmly into his arms. A mindless thing to do, but he remained unhurt. He wiped what was left of the milky goo from the alien with a clean towel as he continued to examine it. Ray. I'll call you Ray. I guess you're a boy. He chuckled as he strolled out of his study. Somewhere in space beyond our galaxy in the Milky Way, the silent waves of Ray's first cry was heard as a spaceship containing dozens of aliens now traveled towards Earth. On the eastern coast of Hangzhou Province, China, soft notes from a Paijiu flute filled the air as the soft breeze from sea waves swayed distant trees in a rhythmic motion. The smell of grilled fish hovered in the air as fishermen were already sailing back to the docks. The orange sky was filled with hundreds of different bird species as the mercenary watched in awe at the beauty of such a wonderful sight. He was soon greeted by a familiar sight. A beautiful English woman strolled calmly towards him, her blonde hair perfectly knitted in a ponytail on her head. Alice, the mercenary mused. You have a new contract, she replied. I just picked up another extraterrestrial on our radar, and I've locked on the location of the alien, she continued. What should I expect? The mercenary asked. A few days ago, an archaeologist discovered a lost egg belonging to the Xeron species and he carried it home. The egg soon hatched, springing up on our radar and informing us of its presence. Strangely, the alien seems to have bonded with the archaeologist and so far has caused no harm to him. Your job is to retrieve this alien alive. Should I proceed for extraction immediately? The mercenary asked. Yes, proceed. What about the archaeologist you spoke about? Take care of him. No witnesses, she replied, and she turned immediately and walked away. Alice is the head scientist at Catalyst, a secret organization that operates in the shadows. Their primary objective is to ensure that the knowledge of aliens and monsters remains a myth at any cost. For decades, they have operated in the dark, using advanced technology to keep the sanity of men in place. But alien sightings seems to have doubled in the last decade, making them doubt if they'll be able to hold back the big secret for much longer. That we are not alone in the universe. It had been heavily raining all day and Dr. Stones had been forced to remain indoors. He had spent his entire day researching possible sightings of similar species in the past, but hit a dead end time and time again. Ray hung onto his neck from behind, staring into the laptop too. They had spent just 2 weeks together, but the extraterrestrial alien now trusted him with his life. Ray was a fast learner and eater too. He ate almost everything Dr. Stones had given him. Unlike humans, Ray seemed to grow and learn at amazing speeds, and Dr. Stones knew the painful truth. If Ray continued to grow at such speed, he would soon have different government agencies at his door. His primary goal was to get Ray home before anyone could come knocking and sniffing around. Ray already understood Dr. Stones clearly whenever he spoke and was obedient to every command. Suddenly, a splash of lightning hit a tree outside the house, taking out all the power. Someone walked into his home. Dr. Stone sighted a man at a distance step into the house and search for the pistol beneath his desk. Anybody home? Hand over the alien, Doctor, the mercenary said as he walked in, but Stones remained quiet. This was nothing compared to the many alien encounters he had faced over the years. This was just a newborn and he was most likely harmless. He had once fought against a 10-foot Xeron and managed to capture it. He had hunted different species of aliens for decades. He just wanted to get this over with. What do you want with them? Dr. Stones muttered, but the mercenary ignored him. After a brief wait, Stones sprung out from his hiding spot, with Ray still clinging tightly to his back, and he fired several rounds towards the direction of the mercenary. He was a bad shot, but it was still worth a try. He needed a distraction. He jumped out into his lawn through his window, shattering it into 1,000 pieces, and headed for his truck. He wasted no time in starting the truck and speeding out into the quiet road. It was already the late hours of the night, but Stones knew that whoever just walked into his room was not going to let him live. Dr. Stones raced past several cars as the mercenary trailed closely behind on a Ducati motorcycle, roaring into the night as he raced further. I should have got a fucking car! Stones groaned as his truck raced at an insulting speed. The mercenary closed in quickly and Dr. Stones thought of an escape plan. Without warning, a bright light enveloped the midnight sky, and an unidentified object appeared in the distance and flew towards their direction. It took a moment, but Dr. Stones knew what it was. A spaceship. It looked like a massive flying castle covered with some sort of force field, which was a mix of two distinct colors, emeralds and sapphire. Stones immediately knew what they had come for. Oh, shit! Stone screamed as his brakes failed to respond. The mercenary was now right behind him, and hell began to break loose. Stones guided the truck as he drifted along the busy highway, dodging several incoming cars as he sped further. Several openings soon appeared at different sides of the spaceship, releasing dozens of aliens into the city. Stones was not the only one who had now shifted his gaze away from the road, and his truck collided with an incoming car. The truck immediately left the grounds, somersaulting twice in the air before landing on its top. Cars began to halt at every corner of the road as people raced away from the incoming threat. The mercenary was now faced with a bigger challenge as the aliens drew closer, taking out anything that walked along their path. They were all at least 10 feet tall, screeching at a loud pitch as they moved towards the direction of the crash. Several choppers approached towards them as sirens emanated from the distance. Loud shots were now being fired at the incoming threats, and even the mercenary had joined in on the all-out attack. Rockets filled the night sky, targeted towards the unfriendly visitors on all fronts. An all-out war had broken out. Dr. Stones was unhurt as he crept out of the wreck. Ray had created a tiny force field just before the crash and had kept them both safe. Stones stared at the invaders with dread. They looked much like Ray, but had a few significant differences. Suddenly, a huge electromagnetic pulse shot into the sky, bringing time to a standstill. Only the aliens were not affected by the time freeze. Everything else stood still. Dr. Stones was still under Ray's force field and was not affected too, and he watched in shock as men in advanced battlesuits dropped into the scene. The mercenary wasn't affected either. Their weapons were out of this world and they knew exactly where to hit the aliens, moving with perfect coordination. It was a massacre. Ray, listen to me. You have to go with them. This is not your world. They have come for you, and you can put an end to all of this chaos. Ray, you're the only one that can make them understand. Ray, you hear me? Ray was smart and he could understand Dr. Stone's every word, but he didn't want to go. He felt more fear than love for his new family, and he wanted to stay with Dr. Stones. Ray, look here, buddy. I understand how you feel, but humans will never accept you here. They'll hunt you down until you're put down. We tend to fear what we don't understand. That's us humans, Ray. You'll be safer with them. Ray began to glow with emotions as he ran towards the spaceship. The rest of the aliens soon retreated back to the ship and disappeared into the sky. Dr. Stones knew this would be an unforgettable experience as he wandered into oblivion. What adventures awaited Ray in the stars beyond?
Hi everyone, Two of us here. Subscribe for more horror stories.
The creatures have evolved and are now resistant to Regan's radio frequency, but Evelyn and her boys are very close to the riverbank, and she knew that they could not afford to stop. She wondered how the creatures evolved so fast. A few weeks ago, the creatures could not stand the static noise that emanated from the radio set, and they were able to weaponize it against them, but now, the high-pitched radio frequency barely had any effect on them. We would need to find another way to deal with these creatures, she thought, but what was important at the moment was getting Marcus and baby Abbott safely to the island. She knew that Regan had made it safely to the island. The radio frequency was obviously Regan's idea. "Marcus," Evelyn whispered. Marcus turned. He noticed his mother's index finger was placed across her lips in a gesture that meant, "Quiet." Marcus crouched. One of the creatures stood a few feet away from them, totally unaware of their presence. They knew they had to wait calmly as the radio frequency was now of little help. They had been wandering through the woods for a few days and were almost at the riverbank. They just had to make it to the riverbank without being caught. So far, they had not encountered any creature until now. Baby Abbott still lay calmly inside his wooden chest, and Marcus lowered it slowly to the ground. A branch snapped in the distance as the creature shifted its gaze toward the sound. "Oh shit!" A stranger sprung out from behind a small shrub and fled away from the creature. Evelyn grabbed her shotgun and trailed closely behind. "Hey!" Evelyn yelled as the creature turned immediately and charged towards her. She cocked her gun and fired 3 shots at the alien, dropping it stone cold to the ground. She was aware that the sound would attract more creatures. She quickly retreated to where Marcus was crouched, grabbed the wooden cot containing baby Abbott. "Let's go," she said, as they both joined up with the stranger and raced towards the riverbank, which was now in sight. "I'm Grant," the stranger said, but Evelyn remained quiet. Thank you for saving my life, he continued as Evelyn nodded in understanding. They had been running for a while when Grant suddenly came to a halt and motioned for them to crouch behind a small rock. He placed his hands to his ears and listened to something. Evelyn could spot a tiny device embedded into both of his ears. It looked like some sort of advanced hearing aid. Her thoughts immediately trailed back to Regan. She hoped her daughter was safe on the island. There are 3 of them, Grant finally declared. How do you possibly know that? Evelyn asked. I built this device. He pointed at the device in his ear. It can pick up sound waves and synchronize them into English. So, you're trying to say that you can hear them speak? Evelyn asked curiously. Yes. Evelyn and Marcus exchanged glances. Do you know why these things are here, on Earth? Marcus asked, but Grant motioned to them to remain quiet. The creatures soon strolled in slowly and scouted the surroundings for a while, before retreating the way they came. That's why I need to get to the island quickly, Grant started. According to what I've been able to gather from their conversations, they were on a space trip when they lost control of their ship and crashed into the Earth. The Death Angels, as many call them, kill humans because noise is their kryptonite. That's why radio waves can harm them. But what do they want from us? Not from us, Grant replied. They're searching for something. I'm not sure what it is, but I believe they want to leave Earth as much as we want them to. Perhaps their planet is void of sound and Earth is a really noisy place to be. I know that if we can find out what they're searching for and lead them to it, they'd be pleased to leave on their own. Evelyn and Marcus listened to Grant's theory. He made little sense, but they couldn't conclude just yet. Besides, they had more pressing issues at hand. What do they sound like? Marcus asked. You can hear it for yourself as soon as we get on the boat. Grant took off the hearing device and placed it into Marcus's ears along with a strange-looking map. You are headed for the island too? Evelyn asked in shock as they strolled out of the woods and into the riverbank. Yeah. Grant proceeded to bring out a small boat, which was hidden somewhere behind the dockyard, and they all jumped aboard. I need to get a few things from that house. Grant pointed towards a wooden house that stood erect at a short distance away from them, before strolling quickly towards it. Mom, something is coming, Marcus declared after listening to a short conversation through the earpiece. Grant, please hurry, she screamed. One of the creatures soon leapt out from the field into the backyard as Grant stepped out from the wooden house. Grant, watch out! Evelyn screamed, but it was too late. The creature lunged towards Grant, and he dodged the first attack as he jumped towards his right. He quickly rose to his feet and fled towards the boat, but he was much slower than the creature as it soon caught up to him, hacking him into several pieces. Evelyn grabbed the oar and rowed quickly away from the riverbank. They had been rowing for several hours and soon arrived at the island. A familiar face sprinted towards them and stole an embrace. It was Regan. Evelyn was glad she was fine, but they had much more work to do. Emmett stood in the distance, watching the reunited family as he pondered upon what he had done to his family. He had watched them die. He should have fought for them. Evelyn narrated what Grant had told them before his death, and they all decided to work together to discover what the aliens were searching for. They knew that they wouldn't be able to stay on the island forever. There were some marked out coordinates on the map of the entire city, but they all didn't know how to connect the dots. Evelyn wondered why Grant had given Marcus the map shortly before his death, as though he knew that he was going to die. I can help out with that, Emmett's voice echoed in the room. I have some knowledge of it. 2 weeks of waiting have gone by, and finally some good news. Emmett was done with the map. Grant was trying to pass a message through the map, and Emmett had finally deciphered the mystery. I don't know what is there, but what I know is that Grant's measurements all led to this spot. Whatever Grant spoke about is surely in that spot. Emmett pointed at a spot on the map. There was only one more task. Someone had to check it out. The location led back to the city across the river. Who was going to bell the cat? Regan stared at her mother. Evelyn knew what was going through her daughter's mind. She heaved a heavy sigh. Regan was stubborn. She knew that Regan wanted to go, and denying her will seldom ended well. She nodded in affirmation. Evelyn decided to go too. She couldn't leave Regan all by herself again. Take care of your brother, Evelyn said to Marcus. We'll be back soon. He nodded in affirmation. Regan, Evelyn, and Emmett started towards the city to discover what the map was pointing to, and if possible, lead the aliens to the site of the map and for all their sakes. They better be right about trusting Grant's words. The task was not going to be easy. They weren't even sure if the marking meant anything, but if they had a tiny chance of dispelling the creatures from Earth, they had to take it. The sun had already been swallowed up by the dark sky when they arrived in the city. It's already dark. Why didn't we think of this? Evelyn let out in frustration. It was not the best of ideas to be on this side of the river at night, but they had to go on anyway. The trio made their way in the darkness of the night towards the marked spot on the map. Marcus had given the hearing device to Regan when he discovered that it enabled her to hear clearly. The marked spot was not far from the riverbank. They finally understood why the creatures were more concentrated in these parts than others. They soon arrived at the marked spot, and they discovered a cave hidden in the distance. That has to be the place, Emmett mused. Let's go check it out, Regan let out as they strolled towards the mouth of the cave. One of the creatures emerged from within the cave and charged towards them. Go! Emmett barked as he pulled out a small pistol and cracked a shot at the alien, drawing its attention towards him as he sped into the nearby forest. Evelyn and Regan wasted no time in speeding into the cave. There was an eerie feeling about the cave. It felt outer-worldly and was unusually spacious for such a small entry passage. They proceeded further into the cave and soon arrived at what seemed like its center. Something huge stood in the middle of the cave, but they were both not sure of what it was. One thing they knew, however, was that it looked like something from out of this world. Evelyn brought out a small torch and shone it against the sinister object. Their jaws both fell as they stared at the massive object in shock. Grant was right. They were looking for this. A massive, space-like object stood in front of them, like a hive of some sort of a spaceship. The next task was to lure the aliens into the cave. That part was simple. They had brought along a few firecrackers. They wasted no time in shooting them into the air as they made loud bangs. Evelyn and Regan proceeded to hide at a secluded corner in the cave as loud rumblings emanated from the mouth of the cave. Several creatures rushed in and stopped short immediately as they felt the ship's presence. One of the creatures proceeded into the spaceship, and after a brief wait, an ominous sound was heard from within the spaceship, and it began to rise into the sky in the dark. Grant was right, Evelyn mused. They had been searching for this spaceship. The other creatures soon entered as a loud noise emanated from within the spaceship, probably alerting the others that they had found their prize. Evelyn and Regan watched as the massive object disappeared into the night sky.